tēnā tātou I te whare. Ko tai mai te wā mo te tīmata tō tātou huihuinga. I tuku atu kia koutou te haukainga. A koutou hei tūwhere ki tō tātou huihuinga.
Tēnā tātou koutou e poti tō tātou whare. Tīmata mai nā whakahari o tēnei rā mātou te kratiri o waka moimiti ki Ngāri. Ia tau I horo o Ngāti Tangi Nui a tātou. Tūrere ki noi tātou. Tūrere te māngai ngā me he te komita te katoru tātou. Tēnei anō mātou a koutou pui, ngā tatu mārene ki mō, te koutou hara tēnei aku. Tuatahi anō tukana ki mātou e waka moimiti whakawhetanga ngā manāki tangi ki wenei mātou ngā rātu mūtanga whakahara tēnei. O tirāki a tūturu anō te koutou manāki tangi ki te mātou ngā whiriwhiritanga me ngā koutou whakatoke a Whenua e mātou. Ia tua wai ki a whaihua I nei tua hutanga watua. Tukana ki mātou ino e kia hō te ringatinga o te maturi tamata waihua tamu me ngā ana he ra kona kuta māwe e tātou mai ai ni a tēnei.
Kia ora mata. Anihi tēnei kia koe tau e tuwhera whakatika hawātia ki tō tātou kōrero ki mōna. Kia ora and greetings everybody. Just going to work through the agenda. Just starting reminder that this is a standing committee of council and so the meeting is being reported. Kia ora tātou. We'll start with apologies. We've got apologies from Commissioner Stephen Selwood and from Martire Duncan. Do we have any other apologies?
Buddy, for lateness.
Buddy for lateness.
And Commissioner Selwood is moving house, so we let him off.
Right. So can I call for mover for that apologies be accepted?
Yep.
Fitty and seconder, Bill. Public forum, we've got no requests for items in the public forum. Any late items? None. There's no confidential business to be transferred into the open forum. And are there any requests for change of order of business? None. Right. We'll work through. Let's do some housekeeping, Mita and Co. Then we'll pass over for your presentation. Work through confirmation of minutes. And there's two sets of minutes in our pack. The first set is a meeting of the Soropu held on the 2nd of December 2021. Apparently after an audit it was found that they hadn't been moved and seconded. So can I have, so from someone who was there we've got Puhiraki who was there, Commissioner Tolly, Commissioner Shadrack, Wollaston and Commissioner Wasley. Fitty was there. So could I have a mover and accept mover for the minutes? Yep. Moved by Fitty and seconded by Puhira. Now moving on to the minutes of the meeting at Waimapu Marae, 15th of February. I wasn't at that meeting, so first of all, are there any corrections to the minutes? Bill?
Chair, I see Stephen Selwood's not either present or an apology, and I thought he was an apology for that meeting from him. Well, not that I was there either, but...
Yes, he was an apology.
Were you, it was just Stephen?
Yeah.
Okay, I will make that an amendment. Any other corrections to the minutes?
I'm happy to move.
Okay, moved Commissioner Tolly, seconded Desiree. Destiny, sorry. Okay, so So the recommendation is the minutes of the Tangata Whenua Council Committee meeting held on the 15th of February be confirmed as a true and correct record, with the addition of Stephen Selwood as an apology. Call for any declarations of conflict of interest? None? Ka pai. Hoi anō, tuku atu te taima kai a koutou meta, ane tō rōpū, for your presentation.
Really one minute.
Yeah, but it's fine.
Okay,
Or at the end of, well, you face the camera, yeah. You.
Tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou. Ki ngā meme horo re ko tai mai ki wainganui a mātua ngā chihe. Hei whakarongo ki ngā kōrero whamai ki tō mātou kāinga, tā mātou takiwā katoa. Kore ko tēnā koutou tēnā tātou. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I first say that it is an honour to have you here. I'm not sure if you've been here before, the Hapu Forum, or even Council for that matter.
I think that's the first time.
It's the first time for everything, and so it's the first time for commissioners as well. It is a privilege. It's an opportunity which we hope we use to the max. Nice to see you again, Alan. And there was a time when we stood on opposite sides of the house. Well, I must say we weren't always on opposite sides of the issues. So, and that's a fond memory that I have with your experience in politics. So, pleasure to see you here. We didn't, or I didn't, prepare a written submission for this forum, but we've been talking since we knew that you were coming about the various issues, so we narrowed it right down, and I will raise the important issues for us, not in too much detail, and look for some level of commitment to entering into discussions with us and further advance these matters, including not just a commitment to enter into discussions, but also timeframes for that to happen. We're mindful that the Commission is not a permanent arrangement with us, which is a shame, because we may eventually return to the status quo where there are some racial matters pretty strong in this city. So thank you again for being here. Chad, moki mai ki tō marae. Tō marae whakatūngia o tāua tūpuna. No rea tēnā pa mihi ana. I was just speaking to some of the commissioners earlier on, Anthony, that photo over there.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a house with a red roof that's just right in the middle of it. I was born there. I won't say when, but they were interesting times. And we took no notice of the land grab that was going on here and how our estate over time just shrunk, and all we've got now is this peninsula. And it's predominantly around this peninsula that I want to speak to. Puhiraki would be more aware when Council announced its property disposal policy some time ago. It was so long ago that much of the detail around that I don't recall. But when that announcement was made, we believed that we had entered into genuine, sincere discussions with Council about the return of property surrounding this marae. What we call the Wikitoria Street properties. Yeah. Particularly just adjacent to the marae there. There is a parcel of land that I think is being subdivided into about three titles, plus a right-of-way. And there are other properties as well across the road, but that we understood that they were not yet available. I might be wrong in that sense, but that's fine. I just want to say that we did have discussions with the council representatives. We did go to the extent of getting independent valuations for those properties. Those valuations, or from the council's perspective anyway, were presented on the basis of market value. But this is a special area, which at that time had already been declared a floodplain. So how they came, the value of those properties was a bit of a mystery to us. not because it hadn't taken into consideration those special factors. So what we're seeking at this point in time in regard to the Wikitoria Street properties, which is we just want to get re-engaged with council, good faith discussions, good faith negotiations, to have that parcel of land returned to Ngāti here. We understand that it's a very technical matter. That's the argument that was put back to us when we first entered into discussion with council. There are some very technical issues to be considered here. I don't know what they were, but nevertheless, that's the way it was. So what we were expecting in response was a commitment to re-engage with us, as well as some timeframes around those discussions. Okay, so that's that particular matter. In 2022, you would be aware that there had been a customary rent title awarded to the 5 hapu of Rangataua, they being Ngāti He, Ngāti Tapu, Ngāi Tūkairangi, Ngā Pōtiki, and Ngāti Pukenga. That, after careful consideration, the customary rent title was awarded. So that's fine. What's also being sought at this point in time is the wāhi tapu status of Rangataua. The application that went in was for the entire area. Our submission from Ngāti He only covered some discrete areas pertaining to our historical association with Rangataua, where our tūpuna fought many battles. So they are the discrete areas that we are seeking wāhi tapu orders over. We believe that will change the entire focus that council should have on Rangataua in terms of future development, including future infrastructural needs, because we'll have a huge impact. And this area in front of the marae, Te Toto, is one of those very sensitive areas. We haven't had any engagement with council, as far as I know, over what the wāhi tapu order might mean for local authorities, particularly insofar as development goes. We've already had approaches from some who I won't name, who believe that it will wāhi tapu order in certain places will impede their ability to provide further infrastructure to service Tauranga and Mount Maunganui. We would like to know just how council is going to address that, and we would seek some engagement pretty soon around those matters. For the interest of council, we're also dealing with the MECA applications for Te Moana Toi, or out in the deep sea area of what we might call our customary rights under the Takutai Moana Act in those particular areas. I don't think at this stage it'll have too much impact on council, but something that needs to be noted and considered. Okay, other matter, we've been dealing with property further up the road here, Te Pāhau. I haven't been too involved with it. It's where one of our most sensitive reserves is, our Urupa, which is shared between Ngāti He and Ngāi Tahi, and in some cases Ngāti Ruahine, in some cases. But Des might want to talk a bit more about that, because he's been our representative with the developers and the restoration of a lot of that area. You want to comment, Des?
Kia ora.
Sorry to drop in you.
Te kororo hei kina ki te kororo tautoko hia, te whakahokinga mai ngā whenua, kia ngai tātou tangata whenua. And in particular, just by way of current update, the Haureni link, which was the 15th Ave, West College to Welcome Bay, was reduced to the Mangatapu underpass, which is pretty much the Haureni Causeway, Turret Road, through to the lights intersection there, Kaitimaku. And part of that process was involved with the shed at the time, working with Becca around the engagement, was to look at some of the offset work around that, and that was for the identification of the wetland down below. Part of that process involved, I suppose, a culmination of cultural principles into that eventual consent condition, and those principles were around the rangatiratanga of the land, ownership and management, and that's kind of reflected in how the three hapu, Ngaitehi, Ngātihi, Ngāti Ruahine, the PCBU, performing that instruction under the Regional Council's offset consent, and that's held by the Waka Kotahi. So I think it was quite new, both in the offset mitigation with a cultural component to that, and also as the hapu leading the management of those works. So we coordinate with your usual suspects involved in those type of works. You'll see CB Civil down there if it's council-led resilience at the moment around the water main. Now that water main's a big issue because it supplies all of Mount Papamoa, and it's under full pressure in a very sensitive area down at Te Pāhau, so that's under careful monitoring. And the intention is to look after it and eventually get that management and control of not only that particular past site and cultural heritage feature, but some of the others like Te Owe, down Fantail on the other side of Taipari, and Te Ohi, which is Offspray from Morecambe Bay. So anyway, hoi anō rā, get me atu rā kia koutou katoa.
Good, this. So that's Te Pāhau and other reserves that currently council controlled that were historic past sites and battle sites as well, for the return of those to Ngāti here and Ngaitahi and Ngāti Ruahine. The last one I want to talk about is global warming. Now we have a lot of discussions around how that might impact on us on this marae or Popoti, Mangatapu, Ngāti here. We get a lot of verbal reports that we can expect a rise over so many metres, over so many years, and well, what are we going to do? And we know what we're going to do. Whether council has a mitigation plan of sorts to combat that, it'd be pretty impossible to do, but what is the plan? We need to know that. This marae is what, the marae neke neke. It has moved around from one place to another for different reasons, through illness, in most cases, and it's been here. I can't tell you when. I don't think anybody can tell you exactly here, but when it was placed here. But the issue is, how does council intend to deal with the impact of global warming on marae, our marae, and other marae that we're associated with, and one would be Te Whetū, and another would be to Whareroa, right on the water's edge, and in line, and situated right in line with the rising tides. So that's another matter we will expect to have some ongoing dialogue with council over. You have the technical expertise, we don't. But when it comes to this house, we have the cultural expertise on how it can be dealt with in terms of uplifting, relocating, whatever's necessary. Okay, look, well, thanks for this time. We are open to questions if that's necessary. But thanks again for this opportunity. Kia ora.
Kia ora mita. Parangia mihi tēnei kia koutou, kia koe ki toto hoki. Can I then open up to committee members for questions, discussion on the matters that has been raised?
Kia ora, Mita. Just going back to some of the comments you made earlier, and yes, I support what you said about in earlier times when we looked at that land, especially around Mangatapu, those properties. And if I recall, there was a earlier policy to do with disposal of council lands, which eventually morphed into the RFR, the policy that came through under this commission governance structure eventually. My question to you guys is that there's been a time where you've been sort of absent from the table, and I believe it was during that time when the new policy was put through, ratified, and so on and so on. You weren't really at the table, so your contribution and some of those earlier facts and situations weren't necessarily brought to the table because other more current ones from current members did, as those who were around me at that time knew. But are you satisfied with that that in terms of you've now opened up that doors again, so to speak, do you have enough information to go on in terms of the new policy and how that fits your case in terms of going back those 10 years or so, or not? And so, if not, then how do you propose to work with it and bring it up to date?
What I said was that if we get a commitment from council to re-engage on that particular matter, yes, we will sit down with council. That's what I'm saying. That we have been absent from the table, and there are strong reasons for us doing that. But we've had time to consider it. We've looked at the composition of the people around the table, and come to the conclusion that it's okay to re-engage. And it hasn't been 10 years. It's only been about 4, maybe 5.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Right, lovely. And it's probably time to do it.
Yeah, that's what I'm
A lot
saying.
of commissioners are still, yeah, we keep saying that. I've heard that about 1,000 times in the last 2.5 years.
You're asking me the question, are we going to engage? I said, I'm asking you the question.
Well,
Are
I think,
you,
I think it's a two-way
yeah, it
thing.
is.
Yep.
I've made a commitment.
Get your member in the
Yeah,
RMW.
we've made a commitment in this presentation, and
And get the dialogue
hoping we get one in return.
constant. Yeah, so that's
Do
good.
we own the properties? Does council own the properties?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I might be able to add a little bit of context. Mita, would it be right, I'm just listening to your kōrero, but I'm hearing Ngāti here say there's a hapu committee saying they would like to have that discussion with the commissioners as opposed to staff.
Well, I suppose the commission has to be agreeable to this. In the past, the discussions came to an abrupt halt because whilst we're engaged with the staff at the grassroots level, it appears that political pressure
Yeah,
put an end to any sort of progress that could have been possible.
that's right.
That's why the commissioners are here, because that sort of mentality was moved aside.
And so my understanding of the Wikitoria Street properties is that they were purchased by council in order to support hapu to prevent overdevelopment in a sensitive area quite a long time ago. And as Mitch is rightly saying, then that was left there for a dialogue to happen about what might be the future of those later on. And I think in relation to the RFR policy, whilst Ngāti here wasn't necessarily at Angapu during those discussions, they were kept abreast, and I can say Takawanga did make contact with Anthony in particular, but also I think we met a couple of times to make sure that those thoughts were part of it. So if we look at the RFR process, it does say that at a point in time where council considers property to be surplus to requirements, that they would have a kōrero with the hapu first. So I think we have been careful with the Wikitoria Street properties because of their original intention to not have Wikitoria Street properties appear on a disposal list without being able to facilitate that kōrero, so that everybody knows that. Now, even with that, let's say the RFR policy, even without that history, enables that first discussion to be between hapu and and council commissioners, then I think it comes down to part of the things that were in the RFR policy that was very carefully litigated was around the market value aspect. I'm just hearing in Mita's corridor that, and I guess doing their background research and finding out what would their market value look like, and therefore what does affordability, all that kind of thing look like. It sounds like part of the issue is that whatever has been provided to the hapu doesn't seem to have taken into account what we know of inundation. Now, a property valuer may or may not know much of that. We have a lot of disposal between, data at our disposal between us and regional council. So I wonder whether that's the number of the corridor there is actually saying, okay, if it was surplus to requirements, what does that valuation look like? And it's an interesting example because it's this kind of situation where a valuer may or may not have taken into account what we know of the modelling for inundation. So I just wanted to sort of bring those conversations together and say that seems to be what we would want to have a talk about, is to really make sure that whatever that valuation looks like looks sensible, and whether that ends up in a range of different options that might be about how that land might be returned or managed into the future in whatever way might be conducive to both parties.
Kia ora mata. Just a couple of questions. In terms of the Maka, I'm not necessarily across it, but what's the extent of the area of title there?
Okay, I found this on the web for I'm not Miss Siri.
Sorry, the extent of the title, how far does that go? For the
Well,
Maka?
Rangataua starts at the point over here and goes across to where the Matapihi, the rohe of Ngāti Tapu and Ngai Tūkairangi, and takes and circles the entire area of Rangataua. There are 5 hapu who will actually own the CMT, the customer marine title, and one board will be set up in time. When we know what the Wāhi Tapu parameters are, then we'll start talking about the composition of the governing body of that. Then I can't tell you when that will be. The hearings have taken place, they've been completed, now we're just waiting for a decision on those. As I said before, the original application was for the entire area to declare Wāhi Tapu. Well, Ngāti here doesn't agree with that. We have discrete areas, because this is our marakai out there, you know, it clashes with the concept of a Wāhi Tapu. Yeah, but where the Wāhi Tapu is, just out here, well, there's no fish there anyway. That's all on the tahuna.
And then, so thinking about the, we've got a bridge here. So those overlays.
I think the existing rights will remain. I think the court will say that. I don't know. The only address was made to the bridges and how it was done back in the 50s and 60s.
And then one last question was about, well, actually one question and a comment. Te Pāhau, just in terms of the management of the reserve, how's that?
It'll be a joint
Des.
arrangement again.
How's the arrangement working now between council and the hapu over the management of the reserve?
Over Te Pāhau.
Yeah.
They've handed the site over, and there are maintenance aspects associated with the like your general maintenance, and there's some capital resilience work. So anything that steps in outside of our work program, which is meeting the requirements of their consent to there's cultural and wetland mitigation. So there's elements of turning it back into getting the native vegetation right. Some of the management sticking points around responsibility are things like site stability and stormwater management, and the pipe, the future planning of their pipe. So those are the important longer term management aspects that need to be addressed, because if in a handover scenario, it's going to be who manages those encumbering features on there for the hapu, because it may be out of our scope to be able to repair a water main at 12 o'clock at night if it bursts, and that's happened. So we've probably going through a process of once we see out the consent component as to in a conveyancy situation how we address these encumbering features, because they have popped up in our day-to-day carrying out of this consent, but they're really longer term, as you can see, council managed response.
So there's kind of consent requirements that your committee will have to abide by in terms of the ongoing management, and then there's the relationship with the council over other services and elements that track through the reserve,
Yes.
and who's responsible for looking after and managing
Yes, and even the resilience of that land, the slope stability, that's kind of been a bit to and fro, that one between NZTA and TCC, and that's the stability of our pa, because there was a whole lot of roadworks that went in through from the 60s through to the 70s, and I've managed to be, as a monitor for 3 of those since 2010, and they've all changed the landscape, and they've all come across things that shouldn't be there, and they've all had some type of emergency response around stuff that's not on the as-built plans. Oh, we never knew that stormwater was going to go there. So yeah, it can be quite an encumbering bit of land if it's not. A lot of these encumbering features aren't factored into that handback process. Yeah, we want to make it easier for our successive generations, not harder, and try and deal with these. So we can kind of hand it over in a better position without having to worry. But you'll talk to elements of, especially whānau, in and around the use of the whenua there, te pāhau, as an urupa for burials. There's issues around not enough room, and issues around stability. So I think those are going to kind of stem into the discussions around providing, even with council, providing any other in the periphery facilities for both either parking or for burial. So these are really pressing matters for Ngātahi Ngātihi that are day-to-day management, we've just had a recent tangi there, Nehu. Tangi Raidena in Nehu, so you may have seen traffic as well as
Thank you.
burials.
I do have one comment, and that's on the climate change, in terms of risk. I know the government's working through their climate change adaptation bill, which is due, I think, in the House later in the year. It would be useful to get an understanding. I mean, I'm not across that either, but it would be useful to understand, I suppose, what council's roles in terms of adaptation and risk management might be.
Would council would have some input into that?
We would have a role.
Really look,
Yeah, so you're already feeding into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a so the Climate Change Adaptation Act set by government, and then driving through that will be council's role.
Yeah.
in
Would
terms
you
of how
be
we manage it.
designing itself from what I would expect?
Well, I think Gabriel's changed a bit of that.
Yeah.
I'm on that task force that's reporting to the cabinet committee, but I think we're feeding into the adaptation.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of these issues, so whether it's at Te Pāhau, stability issues, whether it's here, whether it's the property next door, all of those things had some kind of feature of risk management and also the impacts of climate.
Yep.
But regardless of that, I think the fact that we are creating a climate action
Plan.
and investment
Yeah,
plan, it's a good opportunity to have a talk about what you think, because it's your risk.
Yeah, we were in discussion, as I said, talking about, talking to the council about those issues.
Yeah,
But I'm aware that you'll be feeding into whatever
yeah.
legislation is being drafted at the
That's
moment. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
It's probably worth noting that Rangapū also drafted up a submission back to the adaptation plan as well, largely in line with some of the workshops that have been done around Three Waters. That should have been shared around to you guys, but that's probably worth you guys seeing. It's largely been a principled approach. So, for example, maintaining that kaitiaki should always maintain their connection with whatever taonga they're maintaining that kaitiaki over. And so that way trying to be a bit higher level and leave wherever that actual connection is to be respected in whichever lane that moves onto, but that should probably be shared to you guys as well. I mean, yeah, there's, can anybody remember who's the Climate Plan Action and Investment Plan representatives that Rangapū nominated for? Because it probably would be worth.
Nobody can remember.
It's probably one of those linkages, but we should just share and implement those thoughts. So perhaps Fitty, Hayden, or Nathan, or all should come in, bring you up to speed with whatever's been done so far, and then that helps you decide whatever else.
I have a question. Whānau of the koiwi that's lying out there, we're a bit when you talk about the managed retreat, has the marae committee or the trustees even thought about that? Because when I saw, I think it was Marcian and put up the posts after the storm and that, man, I thought they were deliberately not showing the koiwi there, because I thought they were, but they just missed it, and I saw it was still intact, but I thought it had been washed out. So all I'm asking is that the marae committee and the happy trustees sort of get together with the whānau and try and make a plan around that, as Ngāti here is working with the council to try and stop the erosion going around.
Around here?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's all part of that global warming sort of,
Yeah.
rising tide issue around trying to secure this whole entire area, because if that falls up there, you're just going to have one whole lot of koiwi falling into the Rangataua harbour. And this is not the only places like that.
Yeah,
Other
I've
places.
been just taking note of places in Gisborne and that, where at the Edipars and even that really like that, and I was afraid that it might just happen to this one out here.
Could well. Yes. Yeah, because what we discussed is really our marae resilience. It's the whare tūpuna, our whare tūpuna. It's our urupā. It's our whenua. It's our historic pā site. Te pā o te ariki up here is a historic pā that was occupied for a long time, from the times of Waitaha continuously, and the marae has been brought down because of the flu back in the day, epidemics, and it was safer down here. So that's what Richard was referring to. We have to keep using our whenua, and we're running out of whenua. Because of the town's growing, we're running out of the whenua for our long-term needs, and I think that needs to be factored into a adaptive strategy for climate change, to factor into the water service entities bills. We've had some resilience work done here just over 10 years ago with the stormwater, and also with the sewage, with the storage down here. But if you're an engineer and you see what's happening with climate change, that they won't work. So that's not that could be, you know, across the city, but that these are just specific for here. And we've had a lot of issues that were raised in the early part to Tauranga City around the sewage overspills, and the number of occurrence they have reduced here, and it was actually quite bad with our kohanga only going by smell, or they may know but no one else in the community may not. So there's a lot, and then obviously you've got the koiwi, that all comes under this, you could call it managed retreat, climate change response. Yes, there's water services entities, aspects to it. There are other aspects to it with, I suppose, even spatial planning as well as the adaptive around climate change. So, we really need an emergency response, I would say assistance, as well as the managed retreat. So it all fits into their marae resilience. We're trying to find a kupu. Global warming seemed to be something universal, or at least global.
We'll think of something.
Kia ora.
Any other questions or comments, bit of discussion? Kia ora tata. Kia ora Mr. Koropote, and mihi tēnei kia kota.
Kia ora, thank you very much. One thing I neglected to do, I should have done it at the beginning, introduce you to our Tangata Whenua Forum representative, Andrea Webster. Is it Webster? You were arguing whether you kept your maiden name or no. Yeah, she's the wife of our local treaty lawyer, Spencer Webster. So you'll see more of her. So if you have any need to communicate with us, that can be done through her. Otherwise, mihi ana ki a koutou katoa, murida tēnā koutou tēnā tata.
Kia ora, kia ora.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I did have a couple of questions that you may or may not want to be able to answer now, but I think it might help future context for kōrero. And that might be a brief history of Ngāti Hare's association to Ōpupu or Rotary Park and Te Wati.
Okay.
Because I think they might be good background while we're at your marae to hear that from the hapu in case they come up in future kōrero, especially around how we manage some of the...
What I can do is we can submit a paper to you on that history. It's quite extensive. I couldn't give it to you, or we couldn't give it to you in proper detail off the cuff. Is that okay?
I just think that'll be useful for some of where some of this kōrero may move towards, or at least to have that understanding into the picture. I think that's perfect.
These are areas of sensitivity to Ngāti Hare that reserves that are currently in council ownership. That we have strong associations with.
Rotary Park
And Te Wati Park is another fairly big reserve. And they're sort of in the more resilient areas of here. So I'm just thinking about, you know, as you can hear, the marae's already been moved from Te Ariku Park for other resilience reasons. And I think, you know, the influenza epidemic was part of that, but also there's significant erosion. So I guess we just got to think about, I guess, not moving back to somewhere where we've moved away from for a different reason, or moving into another place that's just going to have the same problems. So just having a bit of a scan of that area, and I was just thinking about those couple of places are things that have been raised in the past of quite significant associations and histories to them, just to allow us to have as informed a look at the areas we can.
Kia ora. I just want to mihi to you for bringing the kōrero. One of the things that this committee does is we, all of the take put before the committee are recorded, and then we report every time we meet on how we're tracking against all of those take. So it doesn't fall into a hole somewhere, and you come back to council in 2 years' time and go, we raised this and nothing's happened, or it's lost somewhere. So just really want to make that point that, and that's Carlo's job, is to make sure that
Keep it on the boil.
keep all those take on the boil. So one of the other papers on the agenda is going through some of the other marae that we've been to see how we're tracking against those actions. So, yeah, just want to give you some reassurance. It hasn't disappeared. It's not going to disappear. Kia ora.
So if you know of a 48 burner cooker, that's probably why we need to keep all these things on the board.
It's not an excuse, Carol.
Oh dear.
Ko dawa nusu a hau, ko tēnei tuku whare tūpuna. I'm the alternative for the Tauranga City Council Te Rangapu with Ange. I was one of the first representatives on the Tangata General Collective with Tuiraki, for Ngāti here, and I served for quite a long time. And then it got to that stage where, you know, there was no communication. But he te mihi au kia koutou. I'm just sitting here listening to, you know, we want reports back, we want this, we're going to report back. Could we get a separate report for the whare? Could we get a separate report for what's happening out here? What I'm talking about is what losses are Tauranga City Council going to have as far as giving back that buddy. Yeah, all those types of things. Where is it sitting right now? We just want that status of a report about that buddy so we know how to go forward and you will know how to go forward. How much, like you said, evaluation, but all that kind of stuff. We've also got our urupa, which is Waitaia, and at the bottom there is a sand urupa where our tūpuna were put in. So that's a real wāhi tapu as far as the map is talking about, and those are the kinds of sites that belong to us. And you know, when you talk about sharing with others, these are significant to our hapu. So, what else is about? I had a whole lot of other stuff going around in my head, but yeah, we'd like to see that type of, you know, I don't want to put in minutes where we have to go back and have a look through minutes. We seek a report. We would like some sort of communication as far as the climate change. I mean, you can see the erosion. It hurts us every day to see those things coming down. Apahutakawa trees. I mean, when the waka came through, that's the first thing you saw, our Pahutakawa trees with the red flowers and stuff like that. You could recognise the place. Now all our Pahutakawa trees have gone down. Those are our tūpuna, those are our tuakama. So for us to see that kind of stuff going on, and it's been going on for years. Years and years and years, and we've had this raru with Transpower, we have raru with transit, waka kotahi now. Because, you know, sometimes you guys and them don't communicate enough for us because we have to deal with separate entities all the time. But some of those entities need to get together themselves. Like Transit and Transpower, we can't do anything without having to talk to them because we've got that roadway, we've got them wanting to make corridors for their stuff. So those are all the things that we come across, but we've got rocks that are all ready to go out here. We need engineers, we need Tauranga City Council, we need Regional Council to be part of all that. So that's where we are right now. We're sick of talking about it. We want reports, we want action, we want funding.
Kia ora. Kia ora, darling.
Kia ora anō. So, can I call for mover to move back into formal session? Sorry, we moved back into formal session. We didn't move out, so sorry. I went, oh no, we didn't move out, so we don't need to go back in. So I recommend that that the Tangata Whenua Tauranga City Council Committee receives the Ngāti He presentation, moved by Shad and seconded by Anne. All in favour?
Aye.
Right, we'll move into our next part of our agenda, Chairperson's report. So I've done a little reflection after 3 meetings. This is my 4th meeting in the chair, and I actually wrote this after I'd been trying unsuccessfully to get involved in or to get on to some webinars that MFE were running, Ministry for the Environment were running, and they kept cancelling them because there was not enough interest. They went ahead with one, and there was me and one other person on it. There were two others that they cancelled, and they probably cancelled them because they saw me registered for the other two, and the first one I was inundating them with questions. But anyway, I'm going to take this report as read, and I just before I open up for any questions or comments. The other thing that I was reflecting on is just the sheer amount of work and issues that Tangata Whenua are having to deal with, and it would, unlike every other hapu and marae, we're not immune for that at Whenua, and was literally inundated with work, primarily in the environmental space. So I was just reflecting on the work of Rangapu, and the relationship with council, and just the positive opportunity that's been created with Rangapu and the partnership with council. And I wasn't making any judgment or didn't have a view. I just thought, well, there's so much going on, and just posed the question. It's rhetorical. It doesn't have to be rhetorical. Whether we're satisfied, happy with how things are going, whether we're getting the maximum benefit out of the arrangement. I'm conscious. So even lots of Māori are conscious, Anne and commissioners, that you won't be here forever, and there is some concern about that. And the reflection one of the reflections I was making was whether we're satisfied that we've got enough of a bedrock, so to speak, in terms of our relationships to make this enduring going forward. So that was a reflection after three meetings at the time. Interesting, Ngāti have raised climate change. Somewhere in my report, I think now I know that one swallow doesn't make a summer, but I was reading an article in the paper where climate change, 5 years ago, nobody believed in it, and now it's apparently the second most important thing apart from the cost of living, certainly to the people that this report had surveyed. So Koiano, I will take the report as having been read, and I don't know if there are any questions or comments or observations.
I do. Look, I thank you for your report, and I think you raised a couple of really important issues that we do need to think about. And actually, it was just the comments that was made before. So we've made a number of changes. The first being that all the meetings are held at Marae of this committee, and the second that we have this ongoing report that keeps a record of what's been said and what's been agreed and what's happening. But I don't know the lady's name, but I just wonder whether, in thinking about how we strengthen this model, actually a report back to each marae isn't such a silly idea, to encapsulate what's being discussed, what's being asked for or about, and then outlining the steps that are going to be taken. Because you're right, when we go, we want to make sure that the structure's well in place, that everything we do, that it makes it hard to unpick. And I think, the comments that you made about, I think you said, the situations outlined above, Maori usually always get left behind. And that's certainly what we've seen. Overwhelmed by the growth, undermined by the growth. And so an important function for us is to ensure that not only are those voices heard, but there's a clear process that will deal with, we won't be able to deal with all the issues, but it is in place. So, and I'm just conscious that it's a lot more work for Carlo's team, but somehow I think we have to do that. So we have a much more defined relationship with each of those marae that we visit.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all developments that are moving towards getting the balance right. So I think, you know, we're up for it as a team, and we've got to work out with Marty, you know, how we make sure that we can deliver on those things. But I think we've been moving in that direction for a while. And I mean, you know, some of the things are balancing out the Māori and non-Māori worlds. Like we've never heard through council, I think, a desire for a seawall, if that's what's suggested with rocks out here. That's something we would need to carefully have a kōrero back with the whānau, make sure that is the collective desire of the hapu and the marae. And so I've made a note of that just to follow that up, just to make sure that comes through. But you know, sometimes there's probably been a lot of kōrero there, but whether it's being tabled here as another matter, and it might have been tabled at regional council, all of those kinds of things. So these hui are really helpful to allow that voice to come through as well. I think it's a sensible, natural next step is to figure out how we best communicate these things back. And if any of our iwi or hapu say that they would prefer it as a report rather than minutes, then you know, you ignore your customer at your own peril. So we're more than happy to adapt and figure that out. And these things do change in conversations. There'll come another day when somebody says, stop sending us a report. You're sick of bloody sending, you can read it in a minute. So that's okay. We just would rather work in with the feedback that we get.
Just commenting on the last 12 months, what you talked about, I think that we've achieved quite a lot of the priorities we set for the last 12 months, you know, like Molly Ward, even the RFR, they all sort of came one after another. And when you guys when the commissioners have just come in, so I think the last 12 months been real good for us. For a few things, like I said, they just came one after another because they've been at the boiling point for a while and then just got tipped over. And the next 12 months, like you say, trying to embed some stuff, some of our priorities, and like the next 12 months to me is going to be a fine line being balanced, because we want to get as much as we can get. Like you know, we've infiltrated, you might as well say it, all in the different levels of staffing, and then getting into governance, and just got to push those a bit more. But like I say, it's a fine balance, because when the commissioners go, I'm hoping that the next lot of councillors come in with a different attitude. But you know, you can only hope and encourage them. You know, so and one of our priorities, I think, we were talking about it, but then you guys came in, and so we were always going to outnumber you in numbers if we, you know, if it ever went that way. Because we talked about having this committee as a committee of whole. So when, so all the councillors on the committee, all of the rangatū, and then pushing from there, because we were talking about that just before they came in, the committee of the whole, you know, and it seemed like a good idea at the time, because we had councillors, you know, and it was all about, I'll say, not getting outvoted at a full council meeting when we had our vote here with our 6 councillors and us, and then maybe going back and getting shut down at a full council meeting. And that was part of the strategy of having this as a committee of whole, I think.
Well, I think if I go back to the discussions that were happening at that time, I think the councillors had moved to committees of the whole, of the policy
Yeah.
committee and all those various committees that you guys walked into. Because what they felt was the subcommittees or the representatives from council that sat on those weren't necessarily taking all the issues back to make the decisions, and so then you kind of relied on certain personalities to do or not do that. So I thought, well, if we make it a committee of the whole, then everybody's responsible to whatever will happen there. The one standing committee, if you like, that never got addressed was this joint standing committee. And so just before the commissioners came in, there was some kōrero about, in that same thinking, should this committee not be a committee of the whole? Now, when the commissioners came in, of course, there was only 4 of them, so it became a committee of the whole anyway. But what it has represented is that those of you who are here, and I'm sure you keep Stephen up to date, you're aware of not only the kōrero that happened in here, but this background information that also helps to inform your thinking, even outside of the issues raised here. In your other forums, you as commissioners have an awareness of that. So that's where they came about. But as 50 says, I mean, even with councillors, there was and does that mean a committee of the whole with all of Rangapu? Because then you have 11 councillors and 17 Rangapu all in the hui. You know, we might not have weekends long enough to get through that. So it was about some of the practicalities of that, but I think the theory of it was sound, is that the system to some degree was broken, even in a non-Māori setting where you only have part of the council. If they're not working cohesively as a team, then you rely on them bringing that back to that whole. So addressing that was bringing in the committees of the whole. So just to give some background to where that kōrero was around.
There's certainly an advantage, and we were just talking about it recently, with the mana whenua reps on Strategy, Finance and Risk Committee, where we're over everything, whereas they come in and out for just certain things, and you miss a whole lot of that background and context.
Also, I think for us to focus for the next 12 months, it would be the election and concentrating on, for want of a better statement or word, control in that seat. You know, as a Rangapu group, you know, we took the time to push for it, and now to me the final stage of that is actually getting somebody up and elected in there, into that seat, and then us helping that seat virtually as a staff behind that seat, you know. So I think that should be a big focus of ours. When's the election?
July next year, but
okay, yeah.
But through you, Chair, surely it's not just the one person sitting around the table, it's all the rest.
Oh yeah.
All the rest. That focus on getting the people out to vote, but also getting some good candidates. And I would hope you just not looking at just one seat for mana whenua.
You know, we did talk about that, putting some others on the other seat, going for elections in the other seats as well. So I'm being given the task of putting some sort of strategy together to try and achieve that. And part of the strategy for me would be that our Rangapu hui from here on in would be like this committee, and go and meeting at a different marae every month or every 2 months a year, if we can get it that way. And us as a group, as Rangapu, we've got to agree on 2 or 4 people we can, I'll say, push into those electoral roles and to the multi-ward seat, and then have them attending every single one of our Rangapu hui, where we are at a marae where they can take on board each marae and happy community's issues. And again, there our group, the Rangapu, will have to act as some backup staff to to record all of the issues that will come forward from each of the maraes and hapis wherever we have the huis. And then those candidates will then be able to say that's the kaupapa, whatever the issues that come out of each of the maraes, basically. You know, but I have to articulate it a bit more on some documentation and so.
Kia ora, Whiti. So is there any other discussion? We're aware of the time we've on Marty has to leave at 12.
Just one other thing I would add. I think it's a good question to raise, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think especially as an independent chair, it's valuable to have somebody just look from the outside and say, hey, are we doing the best we can here? Are we making the most of it? I would say in my 5 years, I would say I have seen the quality of the agenda has moved quite substantially in that time. From some things that people might consider quite trivial. In fact, I remember one of my first hui was actually looking at a buoy that was going to be placed out here in the event of a sewage spill, and whether that should have te reo Māori and te reo Pākehā on that buoy. I would suggest that was not particularly a strategic conversation. So I did use that in the early days as an example of we can reach out to this whānau right here and ask them what they would like there over an email or through a chat or in our usual relationship kōrero. That's not something that should be on an agenda of a collective as such. In saying that, I mean, you look at just even now with Ngāti here, and we've been very respectful of their positioning on wanting to be on Rangapu or not for various reasons, and we've been working hard through their rep to keep them abreast of everything. So there's nothing that has been tabled with Rangapu that also hasn't been sent to our Ngāti here whānau. And as Takawanga, we should always operate as that. And what it does is it means, and it does remind us not to treat Rangapu as a tick box exercise. And I think that's really important. So it's been a good test for us to be able to try and manage that part of it. But in saying that, we can still see clearly that there are conversations and influence that Ngāti here is not necessarily right up to date with in what we've been able to do here. So I think it's a challenge that I think we should be continually thinking about. I think we have deepened the quality of engagement that we do through Rangapu and outside of Rangapu. We do hear commentary out there about tick box exercises and those sorts of things, and I can safely say as Takawanga and with the support of Māori and exec, we wouldn't allow that to happen. Sometimes we get criticised pretty tough, but I think we often go and sit down in the background and write down, okay, if somebody says they haven't had influence, if they are on Rangapu and every AIP's gone to Rangapu, the strategic framework, decision-making framework of council, the entire thing has been influenced. We have an entire Te Ao Māori approach that's gone to Rangapu in our Kaumātua forum, and then we have members that may sit here and are on AIPs, then I'm not sure which base we've missed, but we're always open to, our door is open to do more and do different. So I think it's a good question. I think we've got to keep an eye on that, and it's a good kind of take for discussion at a table like this, so that we are actually all interested in it. When I hear Whiti talking about elections, what I actually hear is we're all interested in the very best candidates possible putting their name forward for the next lot of elections, so that they can put whatever the community view is on the table.
Thanks for the report, mate. It was a great read, actually. Just over the last two huis from Waimapu and today here at Ohoputi, you can see there's a lot of concerns our whānau are bringing to us. Although I'm sitting here really quiet, I'm really spinning inside about this climate change. I am a part of the subcommittee, and I'd like to offer my help to Ngāti here to get a best long-term outcome for the people here, and alongside TCC and the people and the hapu. So,
Kia ora, Nathan. Kia ora. Kia ora, Nathan. Kia ora tātou. I will put that the Tangata Whenua Tauranga City Council Committee receives the chairperson's report. Can I have a mover? Destiny,
Oh, second.
Destiny, and seconded by Bill. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Okay, moving on to the Rangapu reps report. Take that as read and pass over to you, Whenua.
Kia ora. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. And my role today is to fill in for Matere, who can't be here. And so I'm sure I couldn't do as good a job as she can because it's her report. She knows what was behind what she wrote and so on. But however, I will do my best to keep the corridor moving in terms of any clarification and questioning and so on. So as you can see, I'm not going to read it through. I'm sure you've had plenty of time to read it by now. And but the Rangapu has had a very, very busy time over this period, super busy time, with lots of workshops, etc., etc. And you know, it's sort of brought to bear to the fact that there are just so many different kaupapa that the Rangapu has to spread its talent across in terms of covering as many things as we can. And so this is just a summary, if you like, of the things that we've been involved with. And you know, you look through the in terms of 2A, B, C, D, E, and so on. You know, the arts, culture, heritage, climate change, events, even those things have had to be covered during that month because it's stuff that the staff are working on, and they also need answers from us to carry on their project. And so there's pressure coming from staff, pressure coming from within, from our own, and it's good to keep that pressure moving us along, okay? And as such, we have a lot of people sitting on subcommittees, working parties, working groups. In fact, if you noted them all here, noted them down, I've already written a few who's where, in dealing with some of these take, you'd be amazed at the amount of work that our people are involved with outside of attending meetings, standard Rangapu meetings. But that's good and healthy. So moving on to some of the other stuff from section 2 onto the next page, National Māori Housing Conference, we sent that was something that was held over in Whenua. So it returned to where it first began 8 years ago. I'm looking at Karen. Her and I were at the first one in Whenua, and maybe a bit longer. I can't exactly remember now. But you know, we've gone through a lot of things in terms of housing for Māori, and there's been a lot of our different regions, especially where the conference has been held in Taranaki, in Eastern Bay of Plenty, in Waikato, in Bay of Plenty, up north in Waitangi. Gosh, I'm sure there's a couple more I can't remember. I think there was one in Wellington also. But what it shows is that there are different needs from different people throughout the motu in terms of the way in which they are focusing on building infrastructure, working on processes to initiate their building projects, development projects, etc. And that has been really interesting. So it's basically a matter why we attend these conferences, because there's always a bit of information that can be obtained from those that would be very appropriate for Tauranga Moana. It's also something where we can input into those other areas and try and make it easier for them, for others, to pick up on stuff they haven't thought of, and vice versa. So we see it as a good networking and a good information sharing and swapping. of ideas. And this has borne fruit in our area in terms of our trusts that have had the housing projects. And I believe we've, I'm trying to remember what our number of houses are now that we've built through through that process. 80? Does that sound about right, Carlo? In Tauranga Moana, since we first started in terms of those housing projects. And I'm sure a lot of the ideas come from stuff that we picked up from those conferences. But there's still a while to go yet to get that number up. You can read on what's happening over in those other areas by various people. The Three Waters, well, I think it's enough said. You all know what it's about. We've been following it, we're part of it, and hello, there'll be 10 water service entities now, but it's going to be interesting how that pans out over the next few months anyway, in terms of that kaupapa. Over to the professional development part one, just a little bit of a disappointment. The first part of the institute was good in terms of overall numbers, but a lot of the numbers were made up of independent people, which is okay, but the purpose was to get our members upgraded, educated, improved in their governance knowledge and so on. So we've got part two coming up, and we now know where we have to concentrate on. As I said, the overall numbers are good, but the actual numbers from the Whenua members per se could have been better. All right. We had the appointment of the museum director at the Pohiri the other week, and it was a good event. Did the right thing by introducing Greg through the process of how mana whenua welcome their new people into our rohe, and I think also the mana whenua who brought him over obviously had schooled him off in the beginning of this sort of thing, and it's up to us now to provide further enlightenment as to how we as mana whenua, tangata whenua, work with that particular kaupapa, especially with an awesome museum that is on its way. Number 7 is just key priorities. Look through that list there. It's pretty straightforward. We talked about the elections, electoral commission, etc. All the different waters, take, kaupapa, local government reform. Everything is still partway through being processed. A lot of these projects, and so we just have a wait until they eventually get completed. But there's always others to follow in that sense. That's it. So, he pātai. Any pātai. Well, anything else that the members want to contribute?
I just want to say to the National Housing Conference that
that's right.
one of the things that mostly stood out for me while being there was give us the resources and let us get on. And watching Rotorua Boys High have 2 kainga ora houses being built there is really inspirational for that to happen within our rohe, within our college. Even the girls' college, I'm sure they've got really skilled carpenters, those girls, but that's something I'd like to see being implemented in our schools, in our colleges. But it was a great conference.
So they're working with the Trades Academy there.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great model.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I was just wondering how we could put that into Boys High, Mount College, or the Kura Kaupapa, because I think we need it here for them.
Jason just came through your report. Back to the Rangatū.
Yeah, I was just adding on to
Yeah. I mean your own personal. In a different form.
A couple of things I'll add. I mean, my observations at the Māori Housing Conference is that the government is very keen on partnering with you. So there's only so much we can do as a council. I think, what we need to be is agile. I think if we can lend our support when those partnerships arise, but certainly government is prioritising connecting there, and we've probably felt that. We've felt in Māori housing, it's been hard to drive a connection with Imhad and Maihi and even to Punikokiri to some degree, but to drive that for a connection with council to do something. And I've talked to Charlie Rahi as the chair of Whenua, but also Charlie Tawhio as the chair of Maitarangi, and I've got a meeting on Friday with one of the co-chairs of Ngāti Pukenga, that hey, we need you guys pitching for this, and we'll get in behind you one way or another. But it is a hard slog for us to try and convince those government departments to partner with council. So our secret to success from the council point of view is looking out for when those drivers come from Tangata and do it. And similar to that one, Destiny is there. And also good having Destiny alongside us as Takawanga there, and Machi there as well. I think going and spending that time is time really good for our relationships and sharing ideas about how things can happen. But for example, those trade training opportunities look like MB and MSD lanes all day long, that we can get right in behind and encourage them, like, can you guys play that card? Because then we can get in behind you and help smooth the way for those to land in places where they make a difference. We're getting more and more excited about some of the Māori housing opportunities out there. I think commissioners, I sent through to you guys an attachment that you couldn't open, because you're locked out of objective today. But what it was some of the mahi that Tāne's been doing, and only one of the areas that Puhiraki is talking about that does model up 240 homes across where several trusts can work together and looking to do that. So I've asked Marie to schedule us in a catch up so I can show you that properly, so you can see some of that progress.
So we can open it.
Tereti has another 11 homes on the radar off the back of the 3 or 4 we enable by investing in the entranceway part of it. So those models start to come through. Now you've got a few examples in that space. The other couple of things in Martini's report, and thank you Puhi for presenting it, that I would highlight is that initial governance training, so was IOD Governance Essentials training, and whilst the Rangapu core representation was a bit light on them coming, we did fill the course. And we negotiated an excellent deal with IOD where we do that course with about $1,100 per person, and the one being done tomorrow at Wairoa Marae, then Shad's coming along to it with Jim Mather. Dr. Jim Mather's running the Tahitanga version of it. 24 spots in both, so we still filled the 24 there and we'll fill the 24 tomorrow, for about 20k. So we've got an exceptional deal there. What it showed me was, we probably need to repeat the cycle to capture those other people, but B, it's actually very worthwhile. And if we can invest in the capability and capacity of our Tangata to function really well at governance bodies, then we'll continue to strengthen the pieces we do have and whatever else that we do have on as well.
True, Carl.
And then there was one other thing that she talked about. The museum director one. It was pretty powerful having Mana Whenua lead that for us. I would like to see us have more of a presence there. So there was a few staff there, and certainly Takawanga and the Heritage Unit were there in strong numbers. And I know it was short notice, and this is more of a positive invite us to say, let's get in behind that. I think, when the CCO directors, if they're already here or if they're still coming, we should look at a similar process for them. And I'll be talking to exec in the same manner, to be saying, look, it would be good to have a good showing from exec. I think we had one exec and Shad, you were able to make it on that one. Keep an eye out for those ones coming up in the future. I think they send a powerful signal of partnership when we are all there together.
Can I put a plug in for better notice, because
Yeah.
the diaries are just so full
Yeah.
that we just can't shoehorn stuff in at the last minute. That's the trouble.
Yeah, and we'll try and balance that out with when we can get a marae as well, and when people start. And so there's a few of those things rolling around. We're pretty conscious of that as well. So I think in your guys' diaries, in particular commissioners, I think that's very valid. For some of the staff though, I have said to them, guess what, Takawanga, we weren't sitting there waiting for that poeti to happen for somebody else. We had to shift everything else we had on too. So, you know, it's just, I think finding that balance higher up the chain, I think I just want to encourage us to take that, otherwise it could come and go and we lose that momentum. It was pretty powerful having in the lineup of people that we had there on that pathway was pretty impressive. So, yep, let's work in all together to figure out how we can do that.
Awesome.
So that's all I was going to say in
And it's just actually following on from Carlo and the comments around the housing conference, and it was really just, I'm heartened what you outlined, Carlo, but it was just making sure that there is that feedback from the conference of some of those key matters that are worthy of working on or further consideration. Also get fed back into the council organisation too, because housing is top of mind in terms of a lot of the work that the organisation is doing, and also picking up where the council can assist in those matters, whether that's bringing together or in that advocacy or leadership role also, or in that support role.
Yeah. So a little bit along with that, Takawanga has a field trip scheduled for later on in May, whereby we're going to visit two of the what we consider the more effective and aligned to where we're at Papakonga developments, and one of those is in Tauhara, near Taupo, or Reparo actually, and another one's at near Wellington. Well, there's a couple near Wellington that look aligned to where we've been positioning our support and how to get right in behind some of those Māori land trusts more so than iwi and hapu, enabling them to progress their restoration. So, yeah, good point.
I was just thinking though about Destiny's comments around the trades academies. Would it be of assistance, because we haven't done it as a commission, if we called in and had a meeting with the principals of the schools, because it's largely the schools that make that decision to do that, and maybe if we set up a meeting with the principals and had a talk to them with that, about the model and I don't know whether they'd listen to us, but it is a sense, as the author of Trades Academies, I'm delighted to hear that it's actually giving practical help, but the school actually has to then develop that within their curriculum and within their funding and within their contacts, because they have to get the people to lead that. But maybe that's something we could do.
No, Portuguese been a little bit in that zone for a while as well. So they've been presented in a trade training sort of environment. Yeah, that would be a good role for us.
Might be a start to get them thinking anyway.
Yeah.
Alongside your comment, and that the boards are involved in that hui as well.
Yes.
Because they are the connection to the community.
Yeah.
We're driven by the data, so I think it's crucial to make it happen to have both the school leader and
the chair of the board and the principal. Okay.
So just as some context to Ange is a new face for you guys. She's the chair at Mount College.
Ah, right. Okay.
Well, that's good, because I just needed some context as to your comment that it's well informed from you.
No, I assumed that she was on the board of trustees.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Yeah, could I just comment on the, thank you for the report to the I'd like to comment on the arts, culture and heritage policy of it. Yeah, thanks for accepting it. I'd like to thank the commissioners for accepting it. Although I'm not part of the subcommittee, I think it's Rawiri and Mokoera myself and two of our hapu artists have been closely engaging with James Wilson. It's been a pleasure to work with James. We can feel his, his passion for this, and it's it's been great. And we've even taken him on a tour in Rotorua to Putake Otawa to just show some examples of some great art that they have out there. And yeah, that's it.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll move the report.
Moved by Puhiraki, the report be accepted. Seconder. Shane. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right, we move on now to the Tangata Whenua presentations updates and pass to Carla.
Ever-growing report. I just wanted to confirm one thing, if my recollection was right. You guys like the green on it.
I was going to ask what the green meant.
My recollection was that
It's done?
You wanted the green up
All
because
go.
we want to see clearly where the duns were.
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's right.
I don't know if
Yeah.
it doesn't look ugly to you guys because we had a bit of a challenge come back. So
No.
it's actually
No.
green on it.
Hasn't got any red on it. That's
Yeah,
There
that's
is,
big.
That might be by design.
Or orange.
Just moving through it. Obviously, you would have had a chance to read it, and it's good to keep on the record where things are at for different things. And keeping with the earlier conversation, we'll have a look at how we can report this speech better back to the marae and the hapu on perhaps their sections, and then turn that into something that they can table and keep track of without needing to come back to the minutes. So that's good feedback. Wairua Marae, pleased to say the noise walls in there and the feedback, having both participated in some processes there, and feedback from those who sit on the pipeline has been that it's made a big difference. So that was probably quite, and I want to acknowledge our transport team for repurposing where they could have had this unconnected. If we're talking about breaking down silos across council, because they were talking to themselves and us, we were able to repurpose something that we would have probably discarded otherwise. And made the commitment of actually putting it up down there, so that's really good. The rest of the road noise stuff, or the next stages on it, depend on two aspects. One is either Waka Kotahi's work program for the road surfacing up there, or transferring it back to us in due course when it no longer becomes a highway when the other highways are completed. So we're probably at a point where there's not a hell of a lot more we can do here. So I'm suggesting we'll probably take that row off our report going into the future. Housing for Ngāti Kahu, it's a bit of a slow process because it's not as simple as just going to Ngāti Kahu and saying, where would you like housing? We actually have to talk to each of the different land blocks and their different areas and where they're at. However, there's a specific workshop planned for the end of May, and they're just got to confirm the actual day for that. In terms of Portarefi, the commissioners have been meeting directly with their group there to work out how that may progress. It says here marae maintenance, but that was actually part of the MOU around the cycleway project. And the big update really is that MOU has been signed, and is the project itself to actually redirect the cyclists on the cycleway will be starting by the end of this month, and that really was dependent on this license to occupy being signed off, which did happen on the 19th of April. So it's been a bit of a labour of love there, trying to get that through. We've been working pretty closely there over at Whareroa with all the different aspects of that we have within our control to support our community. So one of the things that had been raised was naming the road from from Tōtara Street down to the boat ramp. And so there was a name put forward about Tahapari Road, which is actually the name of Hori Ngātai's father. And so that process has just gone through our process, so that's progressed well. Our next priority will be around that emergency exit, which is taking a bit longer than we had hoped. But again, we have to cross over a couple of private areas to be the most optimal pathway for safety for the community, so we'll work through that. Other big updates, Mangatawa Marae, it's been a long time coming to work through the building consents and the and clearing that effluent, but it's all gone through now as far as I understand.
On the 26th of May to start work with them.
There you go, Karakia, so works will start 26th May, awesome. Out at Waiari, as you would have heard Bill and shared in particular, you know, some frustrations, and I guess working our way through and treading on eggshells to some degree about who's going to go first on saying how we should recognise some cultural recognition out there. But they had a really positive wānanga there, led by Sam Hema, and with the support of Yolanda and our team, and they're on a pathway to ensure that a plan is put forward at the next YK week. So that's really the ultimatum we're giving them, is you need to have a program there with some timelines, time frames, some clear details on what we're trying to do and budgets. So that's the plan we're doing.
Just on this, Carly, the stage 2 of the Waiari, like I've had one meeting with, I can't remember his name, the project manager and Tuana and that, and I said I was going to talk with Waitaha and you come back to the project manager and Tuana, and this is probably a report back to those two really. So yeah, I said I was going to carry on, but because it was brought up in our run-through hui, that some members of the Waiari crew, I'll say, the Tangata Whenua crew weren't happy. So from our part as Ngāti Kahu, we don't want to engage about stage 2 of that project where we actually are comfortable that our whananga is happy enough.
Oh, well, you'll be pleased to hear that one, and we'd rather catch up with you about that. And further dates have already been set for those guys to progress their discussion. I mean, we've been pretty frank with them to know that, you know, council's not going to go in there and say, oh, well, we suggest we put a po here or there. They've really got to say this is what would be appropriate. So I think we've got to that point because the quarter is starting to get into the detail. What does access to the Waiari mean? A little bit more detail. So I think I'm pretty confident all that stuff is on track now. Waimapi Marae, we have had some good success actually out in the river. So we could figure out what was causing the blockages in the river, and then also whose responsibility it was, but also try and be quite liberal on how we would help in partnership and trying to clear that up. So sounds like the regional council is working on that, but we'll keep in close tandem with that there. Then we have someone from traffic going out to assess the lighting and footpath options next week. So they have been pretty committed into some of the other traffic projects, so we need to try and figure out what we don't want somebody to just go out there and have a chat to them and not lead on to anything. So we wanted to time it in when somebody could actually have that chat but then be able to follow through as well. So it's a little, because I'm just conscious that feels like that took quite a while to get to this point, but it was probably more of a thing of rather than go there and have a chat when they're not getting there, working together to say this is really more meaningful chat. So confident in that. Other than that, there's plenty of detail there from the team as to what other steps are in there, but I wanted to really focus on the green around things that are, you know, things that are actually reached outcomes. Some of the other stuff gives you some updates on what's happening more operationally, but they can be a bit of lots of hui and trying to get to a do point. Open to quarter on questions.
Question from
Sorry, just a comment really, and it goes back to the beginning when you were talking about the green. Maybe another column with a traffic light in it, so the green completed, maybe a orange to kind of progressing, and a red where we've kind of got issues or challenges or risks
stalled.
around. Sorry?
And it's
Or stalled,
stalled.
yeah. And then we're clear on the stuff that's tracking and then the stuff that we're actually in some trouble with.
Any other questions or comments that haven't been covered? Right, can I have a mover that the report be accepted? Moved by Bill, seconded by Nathan. All in favour?
Good work by the team.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Right, discussion of late items. There are any late items. None were advised to me. Okay, that being the case, right, to what's kia koe, so you were sitting on the other side there, so
Everyone else is
ki tō
gone.
tātou.
Gone.
It's fine.
Kia ora, Puira.
You do have that. Right. Kia ora tātou. Mai ana ngā kōrero wānganui a tātou mō ngā take o te kaupapa nei o tō tātou rōpū nō reira. Mihi atu ki a koutou katoa mō tō perseverance nō reira kei te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa. Ki te kapi i tēnei hui o te ahi nei ino i tātou. E tō mātou matunui o te rangi ki tapu tō ingo. E pā e whakawheta ana mātou ki a koe. Mō tō manakitanga ki a mātou. Ko huhui mai i tēnei rā mō ngā whiriwhiti kōrero o wanganui i ngā take o te kaupapa nei. Ki tau ki a tātou katoa. Kia te whai o tō tātou ariki ahi karaiti. Me te aroha o te atua. Me te whiwhi ngā tahitanga ki te wairua tapu. Ake. Āmene. Rangi ware e. Kia ora tātou.
Thanks for putting up with my son.
Oh, it's no trouble.
Oh, I thought he was just part of the team.
No trouble.
Notice we don't worry.
Very good.